Wanted to introduce our presenters from the Seattle Stand Down, and can you start? I'm in the theme of not being quite prepared. I'm going to go get my questions for you, which are down the back of the room. But can you start by introducing yourselves and explain the work of Seattle Stand Down, and then we'll come back and talk a little more about what that is like in our city.
Okay. So I'll start because Rebecca's going to do most of the talking here today. My name is Jaime Yslas. I'm a veteran of 32 years in the United States Navy. Joined when I was 17, retired when I was 49. So it's where I grew up. After that, I went to work for private industry for a couple of years, working as a defense contractor. And then my wife died and had to do a reset. So one of the things that I had left over was my GI Bill. So I ended up at Seattle University getting a bachelor's in philosophy, and this June I finished their master's in School of Theology and Ministry in their transformational leadership program. One of the things I did when I first checking into Seattle was I connected with the veterans on campus. And it's one of the things that you'll see as a theme. Veterans take care of each other. Veterans know each other. Once somebody, I know that someone is a veteran, we have a bond, and that's pretty special. One of the early things that I got involved in was led by, at that time, a Seattle Central student, Sam Barrett. He just said, we can do something about this homelessness, and Rebecca's going to go more. But I've participated in all 4 of the Seattle Stand Downs. And stand downs are just events where we take care of homeless and at-risk veterans and just try to give them some services. I'm also a member of VetCorps, like Will, like Rebecca, and we're a group of AmeriCorps volunteers on campuses. We take care of the veterans on campuses. So we're actively involved in making sure that veterans have every asset they need to succeed. Through that, I've ended up being on the King County Citizens Oversight Board. One of the brochures I brought that we'll pass around is that this county, here in King County, you're really lucky, unless you're a taxpayer. Part of the property taxes are diverted off for Veterans and Human Services. And I'm on a Citizens Oversight Board that sees how that money is spent. We have over 5,000 human service providers here in King County. So as you work with your 10th city population, there will be plenty of opportunity to learn about those. So we'll pass this around. But you're in a very good place, and one of the reasons that many homeless people come to Seattle is because of the quality of the services here. So that's what we'll be talking a little bit about. We'll be answering the questions that Owen gave us, and then this is for us to interact with you to answer your questions. So please talk to us. Turn it over to Rebecca, my partner in crime.
All right. So I'll stand up so you guys can see me. My name is Rebecca. I'm also a veteran. I did not serve quite as long as Jaime did, but and I was actually a Navy spouse longer than I even served active duty myself. So my husband served in the Navy as well, and we were stationed in Guam for 5 years. I don't recommend it. It's nice to visit, but not to live. So I actually wear many hats. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a graduate student at Seattle U in the community counseling program. I'm the director of the Seattle Stand Down. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that we and Jaime and a couple other people formed together called One Less Mountain. And we can talk about that more later if you have any questions, but basically One Less Mountain is an organization that helps veterans in transition. Our tagline is purpose, direction, and community. And so we attempt to give veterans who are service members who are transitioning out to become veterans a place where they can, again, have a purpose / a mission, where they can have direction so they're not just kind of floundering around, and that they can come back and build a community again. And we do this all through connecting them to community service projects. It could either be a community service project such as the Seattle Stand Down and one that's already developed, or maybe they have something that's a passion of their own and they want to build that and do community service and build their own team to do that. Then we will support them, we will help them do that. and allow them to use our nonprofit status in order to, make that work. Let's see here. So let me go ahead and give you a little bit of history about the Seattle Stand Down. And I'm sorry, light is not my friend today. The sun was getting me and then that. Anyways, so 4 years ago, the Seattle Stand Down was started by an individual named Sam Barrett, who is an Army vet. He was a Ranger. Thank you. So I don't know all those things, but and he was a student at Seattle Central Community College at the time, and he was the Vet Corps navigator. And I'll give you just a quick history because you might be going, "What's the Vet Corps?" Vet Corps is an AmeriCorps program. It's the only one in the country. It's here in Washington State, and it's managed by the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs. And what that program does is it strategically places individuals, we call them navigators, such as Will. Raise your hands. Onto these campuses, because as many of you know, veterans have educational benefits, okay? And in particular, a lot of our veterans coming back from our current wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are having a difficult time transitioning and getting employment right away. So they're kind of going, well, might as well use those educational benefits I have. So there's been, over the past 10 years now, just a huge, surge of veterans going back to college, whether it's community college, tech colleges, universities. But it's a system that can be very hard to navigate. College just can be difficult to navigate. Just using your GI Bill benefits is hard to navigate. So we place these individuals on campuses to help them basically just navigate that system and to help make sure that they're not falling through the cracks and that they're getting connected to either community services or to the VA, the Veterans Administration services, whether that's whatever, if it's medical, whatever they need. Okay, so Sam was on the Seattle Central campus as our Vet Corps navigator. And our Vet Corps navigators are required to do 3 service projects a year. And, oh, that's my other hat. I'm also the regional coordinator over in King County for our Vet Corps navigators. Anyways, so they're required to do a service project. And Sam was approached by Dr. Kilpatrick, who is the president of Seattle Central, who had seen like a 60-minute show about stand downs. And in particular, the one that happens in San Diego, where there's a very, very, very large homeless population in general, but also a very large veteran homeless population. And he had asked Sam, he goes, is there anything like that that happens here in Seattle? And Sam was like, well, I don't think so, but let me check. And then basically, long story short, I found out that there wasn't. So they said, well, let's do it. So they set out that year, 4 years ago, to do it. It was a huge success. I think that year they served a little bit over 200 veterans. And since then, we've served close to 1,000 homeless and at-risk veterans. And beginning, we did it one day, and every year our goal is to make improvements in some fashion. So the second year we added a women-specific area. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the unique challenges that are faced by women veterans, whether it's if they suffer from or have experienced MST, which is military sexual trauma. They're at risk for higher rates of post-traumatic stress. They could be single parents. They could be experiencing domestic violence. And there's just not as many services out there for women in homelessness. There's not as many beds as there is for the general population. They're at risk for higher rates of chemical, substance abuse, dependence. So, on and on, it's all these different challenges. And so, I'll just admit, I felt that it was important that we met these specific needs. Then last year, what did you say was our big change last year that we did? Gosh. A lot, I don't know, just a lot of things.
Yeah, last year, Stand Down 3, what we changed was we brought in Fair Start and we offered a warm meal.
Yeah.
Now, part of what we need to explain is to Stand Down, those of you that don't speak military. What happens in the military? You're out there operating all the time. This really started during the Vietnam conflict. units were out there in the field all the time. They're always in combat. They're always on edge. They're always hyper-vigilant. At some point, that has to stop. So you the unit would hold what's called a stand down. You'd go back to a safe area. You would take a day or two to take care of your equipment, take care of yourself, and get your needs met. We have taken that model, and what we offer for these homeless and at-risk veterans is that sanctuary where they can come in, be recognized as human beings, and we really work hard on that, on greeting everyone, treating them as with the dignity that they deserve. And what we do is we don't offer a hand out, we offer a hand up. So what we do is we provide those services. As you see, as you'll work with the population of the tent city, the challenges in front of these people are huge. There are services that we offer, like, again, that warm meal, and they leave with a bag lunch, or a meal. This is our gear room. This is our community. Anyway, what we do is they come in, they take advantage of these services. We bring in nurses, doctors, the federal VA, the state VA, community service providers, housing providers, legal providers, all of these folks, and we offer a full range of services for these human beings. We put it in one place. This year, our goal is not just to give referrals, not just to give brochures, but to do things. We've gone to a 2-day format this year. Day one, we're going to have an expanded business section. And I'm going to plug SU a lot, sorry.
SU, yeah.
We have a business club at SU who does outreach to homeless vets. So day one of Stand Down, we'll be taking vets who are interested in getting jobs. We will help them write resumes. We will print resumes for them. We will give them interview skills classes. We will polish them up a little bit. Because on day two, this business club called Enactus has worked and brought in employers who will hire people on the spot. We're not just offering promises, we're offering jobs. We're also going to have, through our SU Legal School and some legal students who've reached out to the Northwest Justice Project, we're going to have expanded legal services there. We're going to have child support folks there. These are barriers that can, legal barriers can get out there. Unfortunately, in our society, we've criminalized homelessness. Imagine all of you, sure, none of you had to worry this morning as you got up out of bed about where you're going to relieve yourself, about where you're going to eat. We now make it a crime for these human beings who live, who don't have homes as we understand them. We jail them for meeting their basic human needs out on the street. So we try to offer that legal service to help them get past that barrier. Legal services.
And housing.
Housing.
So,
yeah, the big thing that, again, we have here in Seattle, we have a housing options group where Housing and Urban Development, HUD, has partnered with the VA, and many other community service providers will have the housing option groups there who will interview these folks and help get them into housing if possible. It's a critical shortage, it's a huge problem. Those of us that work in the problem know that if you're a single male, it's kind of easy to get a shelter. If you're a single female, much harder. If you're a family or a couple, the system is totally unfriendly to you. So we're looking for solutions there. So we will have our housing options group there. And again, we're offering solutions. So that's what our stand down is, and it's about, we're excited about it because it's something that we can do. All of you will study, and we all want to end homelessness. But the causes of homelessness are systemic ills, economic ills. There are things that are bigger than we can do. So what we try to do with this day, with these 2 days, is we offer what are called rescue services, and that's the other side, where you take care of the immediate needs of those precious human beings. And that's what we'll be doing. So that's kind of our shtick. Rebecca and I, again, this is a labor of love for us. To put on this 2-day event, we've been meeting at least once a month all year round. We go out, we shamelessly promote this thing. We ask people for money. We ask people for services. We're very lucky that the good people in this county, the people around, do this. We're never funded well enough, but we're funded well. And so I'm going to talk with you a little bit more and answer the questions that you have.
Sure. One question and we will ask you to ask questions as well, so be thinking of those. I'll come back to you soon. One question I was going to ask, Jaime, as you were talking about, we've criminalized homelessness in many ways, and yet that is a similar experience for people who are veterans and people who did not serve. Right. Can you talk a little bit about ways that homelessness is experienced differently by somebody who's a veteran, maybe in challenges that person might face, or also in resources that might, you mentioned, you've referred to the VA quite a bit.
Right.
Are there ways that those, that wasn't actually on your sheet, sorry.
That's okay.
Didn't catch up.
I'll start off.
Yeah.
So, ways that it can be different for veterans than for your general, homeless population is that there's kind of some stigmas around, what's perceived to be a veteran, and in particular a veteran who's homeless, right? There's, some perceived stigmas that, they all have post-traumatic stress. They're all addicted to alcohol, or, whatever, all these different reasons, and, that may not be the case. However, it is true that there's, I think it was like 45% of the veteran homeless population does deal with some type of a mental illness. But a lot of times, these are, the result is, the homelessness is a result of either a mental health issue or a physical issue that was caused by their military service, okay? So I think right there, that's the unique difference between veterans and the general population. And what's being done, just really quickly, two big things is the VA, the Veterans Administration, has this campaign, we'll call it, and I believe theirs is the 10-year plan to end veterans homelessness, which if anybody just Googled it, you could find it, what that all entails. And then King County as well has a 5-year plan. They're like, hey, let's beat the VA. I don't know, not quite there, but good intentions. They have their 5-year plan to end homelessness. And I did bring a cheat sheet for myself to remember all of this stuff. You did kind of ask that one. And basically that's, the King County 5-year plan is centered around 4 different goals. And one is to close the housing gap for currently homeless and at-risk homeless veterans, okay? And basically that's through acquiring more units, either through a mix of capital and housing vouchers. And so they work very closely with HUD, Housing and Urban Development, with a program called HUD-VASH, which the VASH stands for VA Supported Housing. So it's supposed to be what they call a housing first model, where if they have, addiction issues or mental health issues, they don't make them go through treatment first. First we house them, and then through supported housing, by connecting them to all the different services they need, we work on maintaining stable housing, and to get them into, their own housing eventually. A second one is to secure adequate funding and work with partners towards system alignment with an emphasis on exploring efficiencies and reducing duplication of services. So Jaime, you said there's 5,000 human services in general, but within King County, there's over 180 of services that are just dedicated in some way to veterans, okay? That's a big system. It's hard to navigate. It's hard to know as a veteran who's, dealing with all of these issues that they're dealing with, to know which service do I need and how do I get to that service, to come to find out, well, maybe I don't qualify for that service, because just because I'm a vet doesn't mean that I qualify for this vet service. What if I have a dishonorable discharge or anything that's, less than an honorable discharge? Some services will take you, some won't. So, trying to navigate that. Then there's also what they call now a coordinated entry for housing. And that's in general for all housing in King County, not just veterans. So it used to be that there was this agency that had housing, and this agency, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. And they all had their own separate list of housing. And if I was a person looking for affordable housing, or if I was, homeless and I was looking for housing, I had to go to every single agency and try to get on their wait list for housing, okay? So now what they do is they just call 211, which is basically the Social and Human Services information line for the county or the state?
It's a statewide system,
Statewide,
so if you
okay.
if you call here, you'll go to the one that's up at Northgate. And
Yeah.
they have services. Their boundaries for services are within the county.
Yeah. So and so then they will do we call like an assessment of vulnerability to see, if basically if you're like a family with small children, like you would go before a single male, so it's hard, like it's case by case on who's going to get housing first. And unfortunately, that's because the system had been kind of messed up in the past. A lot of vets get in their mind that, well, the only way I'm going to get housing is if I'm addicted and I'm on drugs and like all that stuff, which is not the case. It's just that, those people are more vulnerable, and susceptible to being housed and to being homeless. So those would get services first, but doesn't mean that the other individual who doesn't have all those issues is not going to get housing. Let's see here. So addressing complex needs among veterans, especially newly returning veterans, starting with outreach and prevention, so I kind of just touched on that. And then identify and replicate best practice models for serving veterans. And that is kind of done through, and I won't go into this really hugely, but there's a memorandum of understanding for veteran supportive campuses. And I'm not sure if SPU has signed that, but I would encourage your campus to look into it. And I won't go into that anymore. I'll just kind of go, I'll leave that, and you're going to go, what's that? I need to look into that. Okay.
Some of the other problems, and I'll talk a little bit. I'm going to go, I get to go pastoral on you. Should be a good audience for that. When you enter the military, and Will, you'll agree with this, Rebecca, one of the things that you do is you go through rituals. We all raised our right hand, we swore an oath. We went through an initiation where we were stripped of what we were. Our clothing were changed, we got uniforms, we were busted down, and we were made into a team. There was a ritual process by which we became warriors. When I retired after 32 years, I had a wonderful ceremony. And part of my ceremony in Navy tradition was walking through a passageway of my brother and sister sailors saluting me. And I said, I'm relieved. That noted, for me, the end of my military career. That khaki uniform I wore for 22 years was put away. What happens for many veterans is we do not have, as a society, as we have questioned ritual, as we have changed our attitude toward things religious, we've lost that ritual. What we need, and what's so beautiful, is we need those rituals to say, you were a warrior. You went and did what we asked. You did those inhuman things that we asked you to do. It's time for you to put your uniform down and come back to being a citizen like you were before. How do we do that? Think about those rituals. One of the things that happened this year, and this year's 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Vietnam War, 1964. We had a ceremony at SU where we brought in over 100 some Vietnam veterans. And we had a ceremony to welcome them back. And there were 4 male officers that spoke, the commanders of the various ROTC units. Rah-rah, sis boomba, honorable service, thank you for answering the call of your nation. And it was all okay. The last speaker was a lady who was a Gold Star mother. Gold Star mothers are mothers who have lost a child in combat. When we see the sailor, the soldier, the military person, you see a monolithic single person, you don't realize that behind them are other military people. All of them have families. Many of them have spouses and children. That Gold Star mother stood up there and said, we wronged you men and women. We did not welcome you back after that war. We hated that war, and we projected our hate onto you. She just opened up her arms and said, we welcome you back. That ritual is part of the healing. These men and women that are homeless, they feel that isolation. They go from, again, Will and I, we went Tuesday to the Veterans Hospital with these old men and women that are there in the hospital, beat up, some of them young. And we greet them, and that's a wonderful bond. We don't get that back when we leave. Coming to campus can be traumatic because we're used to order, we're used to discipline. And you come here and it's chaos. So those are some things that are unique differences. You have those readjustment challenges to having that lack of structure. The other thing is that many of us who joined the military, I joined the military because my parents couldn't afford to put me in college. I was going to join for 4 years, get my GI Bill, and then go to school. So I knew if I went at 17, I would have. You join the service to leave difficult circumstances. While you're in the service, you're taken care of. But when you're out, you go back to those same difficult circumstances. In our current economic conditions, you come back to a place where jobs are really hard. So we have broken, flawed human beings that go into the military. Some of them get more broken, more hurt while they're in, and then they're back out among us. That's why some of those difficulties come. So those are some things. The other thing that I really think is interesting, and again, this is from working with us, what if our idea of what a home is based on the conventional model, what we see on TV? I've got a wonderful friend at school, she's 31, perfectly successful, has not lived in a stable house since she's been 11. She's a functioning human being, really happy. So as we think about these people, we've talked to some of these vets who say, you know, I don't want to live by your rules. I don't want to live in your society. I can live in the woods and I'm perfectly happy. We need to question what that is. Is communal living perhaps what was right? Do we need to recreate villages? When we talk about wraparound services, all we're doing is recreating family. So we need to open up our apertures and think, what is housing? How are these people being met? When you talk to these folks, if you take the time to, you're going to find out they're really smart, they're extremely adaptive, and they get by. We want them to do better, but don't think that our model of everybody in their own little room with their little TV and their cell phone and their computer and all of the things that we have the privilege to experience are what housing looks like. I encourage you to start the dialogue and ask them what they need. Next question.
Yeah, well, and that's really helpful, and I think rethinking how we understand the ideal for housing is an important question. You mentioned several times throughout both of your comments around sort of the complex needs, and the number came out of 180 organizations specifically dedicated to addressing veterans' needs. So kind of a two-part question here. What are some of the services, and what are the gaps? What's not being addressed currently organizationally? And then also maybe say more about you mentioned sort of the communal housing idea. Are there models of that that exist in the county?
Okay.
How would that go?
I'm kind of the statistics lady. So what was the first part of the question again?
Complex needs, 180 organizations addressing veterans specifically.
Okay.
What's missing?
Okay. So basically, some of the common challenges again is, he just talked about basically, that loss of your support system or a loss of your military family. These guys and women, especially if they're going to combat situations, their life depends on that person to their right, to their left, in front of them, behind them, and there is a unique bond that is formed, okay? And, when they leave for whatever, reason, it could be lost, and it's hard to maintain that relationship. Not saying that they don't, because I know, you probably do, Jaime probably does, still in touch with people that we served with, but it's not as tight-knit as it was. And, there's times, you would sleep in a hole together. You would sleep in a bunk bed situation. If you were in the Navy, your shipmates were only like this far from the side and above you, like away, okay? So you were like in tight quarters and you had to get along, right? And if you didn't get along, that's expected, but you worked it out, right? Like a family. It could be a loss of purpose or a mission, loss of direction, loss of that community, okay? Because in the military, you're given a mission, you know what you're going to do. And when you don't have it anymore, then you're kind of like, what? I can do what I want? What do I do? You know? Could be trauma that they've experienced, whether it's, you know, from combat, you know, on a ship, something goes wrong. It could be, a huge passion of mine is advocating for a military sexual trauma, which for those of you who don't know, it's basically, there's a spectrum. It could be anywhere from just general in the office place sexual harassment to actual physical assault, rape, okay? Huge epidemic within our military, but I won't go into that. So, you know, suffering from different types of trauma. Physical or mental health disabilities. It could be the post-traumatic stress. Could be traumatic brain injuries, which is, you know, a huge thing that we're learning more about and discovering that you don't have to necessarily have been blown up to experience from a traumatic brain injury, which could then lead to lots of other, you know, conditions and issues. And then the factor that all of those things compiled could lead to, you know, substance abuse or dependence, okay? Many of our veterans coming out, they've been trained. You know, our government spends millions, billions, trillions of dollars of training our veterans in specific types of jobs. But these are not skills that are marketable now in the civilian workplace, okay? Or they can be marketable, but the training that you got in the military is not accepted in the workplace. You know, I know many of my friends who served in the military and were, you know, medics, saved people's lives, you know, on different types of jobs, but they can't just go out and get a job as a nurse or as an EMT. They have to basically start all over and go through all this training over, okay? Even though more and more colleges are starting to take some of these credits, experiential credits, it's still not enough, okay? And then uniquely homeless women, which I kind of already touched on, they've got a lot of different barriers. But then as far as the services, you know, 180 services in King County alone. The reason why that happened was people had the wrong idea. They were like, oh, you know, we've got all these homeless vets and vets aren't getting services. We must not have enough services. We need to get more services. We need to develop more programs. We need to have more agencies. But really, they're just finally starting to figure out that's not the case. There's enough agencies, there's enough programs, but it's the veterans don't know, either one, they don't know where these programs are, they don't know about them, they don't know what they are, or they don't know how to navigate these systems that are around these programs and within these agencies. And so they're getting bounced back and forth in the system, so they may be getting duplicate services from many agencies. You know, they might be falling through the cracks because they were seen for one thing at one agency, but that agency didn't offer like another service they needed, so they're, you know, being sent out to go somewhere else. And the vet is just kind of going, like, this is overwhelming, and I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, and like I went to this person and they were horrible, or, you know, or they told me I didn't qualify. They just kind of get this, I just like freeze, I give up, right? And it just, like I'm sure a lot of us do that when we become overwhelmed, we just shut down.
There's also, when you ask about services, among the range of services, you certainly want to meet all the human needs. There's some really neat, innovative services. There's a growing veterans program where we take veterans and the tagline is we let them go play in the dirt. We take veterans, much like other people who have abuse and addiction issues, we find that working in the earth helps them. So we have a group up in North Bellingham
And then
who has who have organic, sustainable farming practices that they're taking veterans and letting them work there. So we've got growing veterans. We have service animal, therapy animal, emotional support dogs. Many of these veterans benefit from having either a service dog to help them get over a particular need they have, or just an animal for company. So we do some of that. One of the things that the VA has that's available here is called the Creative Arts Program, where you take veterans and you let them make art, whether it's plastic arts, something that they make, poetry, singing, I remember in San Antonio, I went to the National Festival, and I saw this older gentleman who said the only time, he was a World War II veteran, the only time his hands stopped shaking was when he does needlework. And by focusing on that needlework, he forgets his problems. We have groups here in Seattle that help people do art. We have people that help do narrative therapy. Just tell me your story. Let's write your story for both men and women. Those are some powerful therapies. Some places like Union Gospel Mission we criticize because you get a sermon and a sandwich. At least they get a sandwich. So there's a whole broad variety of services. And as we look at human beings being complex, yes, you have your physical needs. Yes, you need a place to sleep. Yes, you need food. Yes, you need shelter. You need some place to eliminate. But as we go for those higher needs, that's where we see it. That's where we see mindfulness groups, meditation practices being used to help people reconnect. Just a whole spectrum, and all of these programs are out there. And Rebecca said, the problem is, how do you know them all? You don't know them all. What you do is you get folks like us navigators, you get folks like 211 who has that database of the 5,000 folks, and they train their contact people to walk you through that. And we depend on people out in the community seeing a need and creating it. When we hear people complain about duplicative services, if I'm homeless, if everything I own is in a bag, and you tell me I've got to go 3 miles to get services, I'm not going to do it. If the services are a block away, I might. So when I hear some folks in the levy committee say, "Oh, we got too much, we got duplication," I poke back at them because we assume mobility. Our privilege blinds us to those issues. That's why one of the things I wanted to share with you all is our Faith and Family Homelessness Project at Seattle U has a program where they come in for 4 hours and they do a poverty immersion workshop. I'd love to have them come in here and do one with you where for 4 hours you're going to live and see what it's like to be poor. When I did it for some participant, I went in, they gave me my family, my script, my budget. And I said, I got this wired. I have more money coming in than I have bills. Easy. The first time I show up at work, I didn't have my bus passes, so I didn't get that week's wages. Because I didn't get that week's wages, everything spiraled out of control. The person that saved us, our make-believe family, had a young student from Seattle Central who said, "Oh, I've been homeless. I'll handle it, Dad." She navigated the system. You need to see what it feels like to be powerless, because all of you here are privileged. All of you here are incredibly blessed. A workshop like that opens your eyes, and as you do that, one of the things that I wrote here from something I read this morning, what makes homelessness possible? How does it happen? What makes things like the Holocaust possible? What makes things like genocide possible? It's when you avert your gaze. So you're handing out stickers for homeless in Seattle that just say hello. It's so powerful when you look at those precious human beings, many of whom are just a little step away from disaster. Don't avert your eyes. It hurts. Don't avert your eyes.
At this point, let's turn it over to you folks. What questions do you have for our panelists?
I've been writing up a series of here. So I've heard of dash housing before. I've never actually seen where it is. I've heard that we have one in Washington. Where the heck is it?
What do you mean, like the housing facility, or?
Yeah. And
So
how-
what HUD VASH is, if anybody's familiar with Section 8, okay, so housing vouchers. So basically that's what HUD VASH is they get a voucher.
Okay.
So you
Okay.
participate. So,
Yeah.
however, there are, and I can connect you with Ryan Loperick is our veteran who's on that housing option groups. There are small pockets where they have done veterans villages, and where they have that model of, you have the human beings that are housed, you also have supportive services.
Right. So I've heard of that in California. there's one like that down by San Diego.
Yeah, so actually the San Diego stand down started as a stand down like us, and then they created a nonprofit, and then they have what's now called the San Diego Veterans Village. It's this huge, I'll call it a complex for lack of a better word, that, they have, a housing first type model. So they bring them in, they house them, they get a room, and then they give them all the supportive services. Now, is there something like that necessarily in Washington? Not quite.
Actually, Habitat for Humanity in South King County has a group of houses down in the South King County area that they are working with.
Yeah.
Have
So
reached out to us to
trying.
start that. So
Yeah.
coming.
So then on that, basically what they do is our housing vouchers, and then we contract with other housing providers, we'll say, yeah.
Next. Any other questions? Sir.
If a sandwich and a sermon isn't the best model, do those agencies like Union Gospel Mission ever come to you and powwow about how do we do this better? What's
One of the things that Union Gospel actually brings people to our our employment workshops. So yes, they do more than that. And again, I shouldn't be that harshly critical, but the homeless people say, I got to sit through a sermon to get a sandwich, and they don't like that. But yet they do work with us, but that's their model, that's their perception, and they've been there doing it for a long time, so I'm not going to say it's bad, but they do partner. The more I go to these workshops and things, I meet the same people there. The faith community, the interfaith community that's involved in fixing housing is incredible.
Yeah. And we, as an organization with a stand down, we try to partner with as many organizations from, community organizations, county, state, federal, right? We try to partner with as many as we can because we don't have all the answers and we don't have all the services. So really what we're doing here at the stand down is we're creating a one-stop shopping place for all the different types. I just did a plug for Fred Meyer, but that they support us in donations. Anyways, so we partner. Jaime sits on a bunch of different boards and committees, and I sit on different boards and committees, and other people we just kind of pull together a bunch of different people in kind of strategic places to pull together, to kind of make this all happen.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
When you mentioned the 2 days of stand down, when are those 2 days?
December 11th and 12th. We passed around flyers, or flyers are floating around. Also on that flyer is our website. I would ask all of you, don't know how that lines up on your finals. There's a link on there to come volunteer. If you can, just come give us a day. One of those 2 days. Come be present with us. See how we do this. If you want to give us money, you can give us money. If you wanted to-
$20 will feed 5 veterans a hot meal.
Yeah. So, yeah, please come the 11th and 12th. We'll actually need volunteers on the 10th. We'll be doing the exciting work of setting up tables and putting up signs and all that good stuff. So 10th, 11th, and 12th, the event is those 2 days. So please come join us. Anything else? Back there. Or is that, it's a camera raise? Okay, go ahead.
Just to go along with that, so the Veterans Support Group here on campus, the cadre and club, are going to be organizing a group to go down there. At least we have a meeting this week. We're going to talk about it. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, it's, again, we're pretty shameless. One of the things that we're doing tomorrow night on Friday.
It just means that we ask. You don't know until you ask, right?
Right.
And if we're told no, then we're told no, and we'll just keep going.
Yeah. After a year of working with our athletic department at SU, tomorrow night is our home opener for our men's basketball team. We'll be down at Key Arena. We've dedicated that game to veterans. If any of you want tickets, I've got some in my game. You can come. We're going to be honoring Gold Star families, Gold Star mothers, and Wounded Warrior families, especially at this game. A game like that, what it does is it raises awareness. We'll have a table there for the stand down. Awareness is huge, to tell people there are ways to do this. If you're not brave enough, if you're not comfortable enough rolling down your window, giving money to that person on the street corner, because it can be a little bit scary. There are other ways to give. We work with other veteran service organizations Last year, PEMCO gave us $1,000. We took that $1,000 and we bought 20 cold weather kits, which is a sleeping bag, some warm clothes, some nutrition bars. Those 50 went down to Dr. Reddy right on the street, and 20 people were taken care of for that $1,000. So we have companies like Microsoft, who we've just partnered with, who's giving us software so we can do our organization. Again, I'll go anywhere, do anything, because it's not for me. It's for my brothers and sisters. Any other questions?
Rebecca, you kind of touched on this, and that was, we have 180 services, you said, just here. What are some of the challenges that that get in the way of people knowing about them? I mean, besides just not having a cell phone, and when was the last time you saw a payphone that had a phone in front of it?
Yeah.
You know?
So first of all, I'd like to say that these 180 different services cover the VA. It covers all the county programs. It covers all the state programs. It even covers VetCorps as one of those. Okay. So even some of these 180 services, they could be big ones and they could be little ones. And it's really just, again, like, even though we have a lot of programs, not a lot of them have big budgets. So they can only focus on a small amount, or some of them are very specific in the service that they offer. Like it might just be that we help vets with employment and help with resumes and stuff like that. It might, to the VA where they do everything, or it might be medical things. It might be addiction treatment. It might be a housing program. It might be a specific women's type program or something. So these different programs are targeting specific subcategories of this one veteran category, if that makes sense.
Now, part of what we do though, Veterans Training Support Center, which is part of VetCorps, sponsors several conferences a year called Be the Connect Conference.
Yeah.
This is where we bring in service providers from a broad range, and we have them connect with each other. Last year we did the one where we had veterans panels, we had veterans talk about their issues. We had a group of 8 or 10 service providers from a variety of places sit down and we role play where a veteran came in with their list of problems. And what we saw was that often you had 2 or 3 people sitting around that table who could contribute to part of the solution. The solutions to homelessness, like all of the problems, are not easy. It's not a one-shot deal. If it was a one-shot deal, it'd be done. They're as complex as we are. So having this broad services and us just getting out there and connecting, by connecting with your campus here, all of you will walk out of here knowing a little bit more that there are services available. As you have Tent City here, you will have other providers that you will come into contact with. Once you have that knowledge, you carry that forward, and as you go do your good work or you do your work in your life of service, you can build on that. So just get out there.
So a lot of these organizations are networked together, at least on a personnel level, where if a vet comes in and they just walk into any one service, that one service, even if they don't provide the one they need, can probably point them in the direction of someone who can.
Probably. So here's
in an ideal world. Yes.
Yeah, in an ideal world. So here's the problem. And we're actually working, so Dow Constantine, the King County executive, set forth and said, do this. And he started, it was a King County Veterans Initiative. And he said, right, we've got all these programs, but veterans are falling through the cracks, or they're like a pinball, in a pinball machine, they're bouncing back and forth. So the goal was, how can we get veterans in general to the services that they need in the least amount of steps, okay? So this is another committee that we're on. And one of the issues is that these agencies, they cannot share information with each other because of confidentiality, and HIPAA and all that different reasons, right? They can't just share this information. So one of the things that we're doing, and we're gonna pilot and launch this at the Seattle Stand Down, is we're creating what we're calling, I'll say, it's like a veteran's passport, okay? So just think of, like a passport, right? And in that, then they can go to a service provider, and the service provider like puts who they are, what service that, you know, their agency, and you know, who the person saw, and kind of a little bit of what they did. And then the vet takes this with them, okay? And then anytime a vet goes to a service provider, then they can share that with that service provider, and then they can see where they've been. So they're not duplicating services, and they can pick up where they left off. I mean, it's just kind of,
yeah, what we're building into this is in the first couple of pages will be a certification of their eligibility for services based on their DD 214 or NG 22. Now, as we do this, we know that we're giving a piece of paper to people that have trouble hanging on to paper. It's a step. It's a step, because for many times you go to these service agencies and first they ask, where's your DD 214, where's your whatever. I mean, I was kind of blown away that I asked a couple of service providers. You know, one of the things that I have as a busted up old guy is my VA ID. It says I'm a disabled veteran. It gets me medical services at the VA. It will not get me services at some community veteran service providers because it's not my DD 214.
like, that's not enough to prove
We snarl.
that he's a vet.
That's
right?
those are some of the administrative problems that we're fighting. And the solution might be, there might be one of you here that's so IT smart that you'll do that. There's actually a consortium out of, as we move ahead in technology to electronic health records, there are folks trying that. We're getting short on time, or are we? Or we're here as long as...
We have time for maybe one more question.
We're here all night.
Yes, sir.
Estimate of homeless veterans in King and or Snohomish counties, and then Tent City, do we know?
Unfortunately, I don't know numbers of veterans in tent cities. I don't know, and that's something, you know what, that we probably should connect. I don't know if they track that number. But I can tell you that, let's see here. Let me just give you all the stats.
Yeah.
So, data collected during the annual point-in-time count conducted in January 2014, and this is nationally, shows that there were just under 50,000 homeless vets in America, which is actually a decline of 33% since the 2010, okay? So, smiles, things are starting to look better. Okay, let's see here. Kind of state by state, total homeless vet population as of the 2013 point-in-time count by HUD was 1,318. Of those, 1,058 were sheltered and 260 were unsheltered. So living in cars, on the street, in tents, stuff like that.
In
Okay.
King County?
Yeah. Well.
No, Washington State.
Yeah. Here's an anecdotal figure.
So, so and then we have estimated there to be around, and it kind of depends, actually, I've been getting some different numbers, but around 800 plus or minus homeless vets in King County. Okay.
Now, one of the things that is kind of, first the anecdote, this year, the one-night count in January here in King County, we have over 3,000 homeless people. I participated at one of the meal sites. 20% of the people that were getting meals were veterans. So in my mind, that 600 to 800 is about right. Another thing about veterans in the homeless population, if you're a woman and you're homeless and you're on the street, you look for a homeless vet to be your partner, because vets are perceived as being adaptable, able to take care of themselves, and just the people to be with. We have many homeless people who claim to be veterans and are not. One of the things that we do at the stand down, if you show up at the door, we're going to let you in. We're going to take care of you. But that population will not, and it is almost a badge of honor to be recognized as a veteran among these folks, because those survival skills that we learned in combat are the same skills that they use in the street.
So, and then the way when they do these point-in-time counts, they're just going by self-identification. It's not like they're out there saying, oh, okay, you're homeless. Okay, I get that. That's proven. You say you're a vet. Oh, prove it. Where's your DD 214? Where this and that, right? They're just kind of taking it at face value. And if they say they're a vet, then they're counting as a vet. So, sometimes, too, then, they may not even identify as being a vet because they may feel shame about it, or, you know, their pride is not where it should be, so they don't want to identify.
Or we have people that have served in the military and said, well, I'm not a vet because I never served in combat.
Oh, God, yeah,
All
thank you.
sorts of stuff like that.
There's-
Are there
yeah.
any other questions? We want to be respectful of your time.
And any general Tent City 3 questions too, if you have those.
Good luck, God bless you, and thank you. And just meet them as human beings. They're going to be different. Probably sometimes they smell bad. They just look threatening. But underneath, part of our compassion, part of our call as we live a life of service should be that these are wonderful people. I just did a workshop a weekend or so ago called From the Street to Stability, and it looked at companioning. And what companionship for these folks is a response to their suffering and isolation. It is a human relationship that is supportive of recovery and maximum wellness, and it is a public relationship. If others see you being kind and acknowledging these people, they might follow your lead. So thank you for opening up the campus and being part of the solution.
Thank you.